And we started pretty much from scratch. Had a book, McClellan's book, an English book on how to tie flies. And it had a few illustrations, and we struggled along and fished when we weren't working, all except Harry, who never worked, so he had lots of time for fishing. That was the start. I lived at the hotel. I grew up in a very small, hotel. 125 guests when we were so full we couldn't move. I had a captive audience. So my proud endeavors, which I would put in the cigar case in the office, were sold for 25 cents a piece, which was a big price then. And stuff like, I learned to tie hair wing royals and fan wing royals and a few things like that would catch their eye, and they would buy them and fish with them and come back and tell me how good they were, although my father would hold them this way and drop them and say they're terrible. So that was the start. And the summer visitors used to come and stay at farms. So they began taking in people that way. And as it became more popular, of course, it was an idyllic setting, so they began adding on. It grew like Topsy. We had a room to the right of the hotel, which was a tying shop. Everybody was free to come in. There were the old familiars like Hendrickson and Stevenson and Dr. Jaffe and, many, many of them. The fellow who wrote all the stories used to come to the hotel and stay 2 months at a time.
Corey Ford?
Corey Ford. Yeah, he lived down there practically. I remember that first order was 1,100 and some dozen. We almost flipped our lid. Because we'd agreed to tie some flies for them wholesale. Can you imagine? $1.25 a dozen.
That was hard work.
And that was when we took in Harry. Because we couldn't possibly tie that many flies. So.
In a short time, probably.
Well, we did it. We were very fussy about our flies. If they went out under our name, which they did, they were just so. Walt was a perfectionist.
And then we did move. You had the shop then over in the Esso station. That's the one I really remember. When I was growing up, I was around the shop all the time. I didn't really tie much when I was young, just to play around. Dad had me winding rods, and he had me storekeeper a little bit, and little odd jobs. I sold worms. I went out and got worms. Then as I got older, I got married when I was about 22, and I found that I wanted something more to do while I was home with the children. And Dad and Mom started me in tying. They built me a little tying table that was portable, and I practiced and worked at it. And then I gradually tied more and more. And as my children grew older, I had more time, so then I would come up and be with Mom and Dad during, a little bit of the fishing season. And then probably in the 70s, I would say, I really got up here and it did more and more, didn't I? And in the 80s. And that's pretty much of how I learned to tie. And like Mom says, Dad was a very particular person on anything he did. So it had to be right.
That she started on the nymphs, which she could tie on the island and just mail back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And she got to be pretty good at it. And she went from the nymphs to learn the wet flies. And she was each stage, she became very adept.
I think learning materials really takes the longest part of fly tying.
It does.
It takes a lot of handling the feathers and all the different materials to get to know them.
To learn how to buy it.
How to buy and then
Where
how
to
to
buy
pick
it.
them.
You know.
Even yet, it's hard. Sometimes you can pick a neck that isn't so great and you don't know it until you really tie it. You think it's going to be a very good neck and it doesn't always. What appears to be isn't always so.
And we raised those chickens.
Oh, how I hated those
them.
chickens.
We both did. Dirty things. Stupid.
We had chickens as long as I can remember.
And of course, when they started raising all those good chickens down there in Pennsylvania, I danced a jig for sure. I couldn't get rid of ours quick enough. You know, the miserable things, they had to grow so old to have good hackle. And you couldn't eat them. They wouldn't hardly even make soup.
They didn't make soup. We couldn't even fricassee them.
To bury them.
It was like eating rubber.
And fight.
And then in the winter time, you'd have to go out and chip the ice and keep their water dishes clear. It was terrible.
Yeah, and they all had to be separately penned because they fight so, the roosters. Oh, that was terrible. They like to make it romantic today, but it took somebody with a family background of a hatchery and a college education and genetics to develop the good ones. When I think back about the time, I think we produced a great many very high quality flies for which we were selling at a very reduced price. I can't see anyone else carrying it on. And there's so many people that tie flies today. There won't be any tremendous void. We just lit the path.
Thursday, June the 2nd, 8 a.m. Sunny but cool. The air temperature's 45. The beaver kill and the woolly weemock are clear and normal. The early morning water temperature 54. Flies have been green drakes, coffins, March browns, gray fox, and also ants and beetles. Yesterday's action was reported spotty. Walt Dette reporting for the Roscoe Rockland Chamber of Commerce.